Amazing moment. Billionaire shocked as maid's unexpected fall into pool reveals hidden truths. David Hawthorne stood on the balcony of his sprawling Beverly Hills mansion, the opulence surrounding him a mere shadow against the chasm of solitude yawning within. The lights glimmered like stars, and laughter of his well-heeled guests pulsed through the air. But it all felt hollow. Wealth had poured like a waterfall into his life, yet here he was, empty. Connections reduced to pretense. He fought the gnawing regret that whispered he'd lost touch with what truly mattered. An insatiable hunger for substance gnawed at him, leaving him restless among the lavished luxuries that surrounded him. Little did he know, one moment would change everything. As David meandered through the throng of guests, he glanced at Maria, the maid who frequently drifted through the edges of his life. Her presence had been like mist, always shifting, often unnoticed. Her hands bore the marks of relentless toil, an unspoken testament to the countless hours spent working within these walls, the very walls that hid her dreams of returning to school. While he watched his empire thrive, she balanced 2 jobs, nurturing a teenage son and keeping quiet hopes for a degree in environmental science alive. To him, she was a ghost. To her, these lavish gatherings felt like a separate realm, a perpetual reminder of everything she could never touch. On that fateful evening, as she scrubbed lemon-scented surfaces, her thoughts drifted towards her son, the sacrifices she made, the dreams which flickered like distant stars just out of reach. Pursuing her degree felt too ambitious amid the relentless grind of survival. Then, in a heartbeat, everything shifted. Climbing the patio steps, her foot slipped on wet stone. A visceral rush of fear shot through her, arms flailing as she descended towards the pool's inviting crystal blue. Time seemed to suspend. David's laugh faded. His heart raced as he dashed forward, hands outstretched to grasp her. As she hit the water with a shocking splash, a piece of polished silver slipped from her wrist, a cherished family bracelet she wore like armor against despair. It drifted down, sinking into the depths, carrying with it a well-worn letter, the last words of her late mother. The moment hung suspended as David pulled her from the water, a rush of relief mixed with confusion etching itself onto his face. A glint of silver caught his attention, and he glimpsed the letter before it was snatched away by the water's embrace. Maria's breath quickened, chest rising and falling in frantic gasps. She had chased dreams beneath the surface, conflicting ideals swirling like water around her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. But the pulling reality of her family's struggle bubbled to the surface. As her heart raced, so did the questions haunting David. Could he remain indifferent after witnessing this moment? The floodgate of his privilege cracked open. Who was he in truth? Did he belong to this world of entitlement when standing next to someone like Maria, whose tenacity reflected a hidden resilience? In that electrifying silence, worlds collided. As she stood soaked and shivering from the cool water, a powerful realization dawned within him. Waves of tension surged through him, a mixture of regret, privilege, and something else he couldn't identify yet. Maria, too, emerged from the water, the release of old burdens leaving her breathless. Could this moment become their turning point? With the stakes now impossibly high, questions loomed like storm clouds. Could David confront the truth of his isolation? Would Maria finally step out from the shadows? As the party raged on, the unspoken truths thrummed like a living pulse waiting to unfold, leaving both of them teetering at the edge of transformation. The splashes of laughter fell away, swallowed by the weighty silence that enveloped David and Maria. He barely processed the sound of guests gasping, while Maria fought to suppress the chill creeping into her bones. The crystal blue of the pool now felt like a mirror, reflecting the chaos of emotion surging inside David. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice cutting through the tension, contrasting with the gaiety of the party buzzing behind them. Maria met his gaze, her eyes filled with confusion. Was this sincere concern, or merely an obligation forced by circumstance? "I'm fine," she stammered, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Moments before, she had felt invisible, the backdrop in the grand theater of the wealthy. Now, she was the epicenter of a moment that brought uncertainty crashing against the shores of her resolve. David struggled with a thought that refused to budge. How could he have been so blind? He had built a life around luxury, yet neglected the lives of those who made such opulence possible. The bracelet, now lost, represented something deeper, an anchor to a world he began to understand he had vacated. The human connection, the breath and heart of community. "Your bracelet," he started, but faltered, as if that piece of jewelry could somehow bridge the gulf that separated their worlds. "It's just a thing," she replied, the edge in her tone sharper than she intended. What was a piece of silver compared to the life woven into her mother's words? But as her anger ebbed, it dawned on Maria how he saw her now, not just as a maid, but as a woman whose dreams flickered beneath the surface. Her hesitation to dream outweighed her effort to survive, and she wondered, was this an opportunity to share her story? The mosaic of their different lives began to take shape. I didn't mean to disrupt your evening," she admitted reluctantly, her vulnerability spilling out. "Disruption can lead to awakening," David mused aloud, a frown creasing his forehead. Awareness stirred within him, a shift ignited by vulnerability that challenged everything he thought he knew about success and fulfillment. You matter," he forced out, the sincerity disconnected from his affluent surroundings. Caught off guard by the sudden outburst, Maria hesitated. Did he genuinely imply her worth extended beyond her role? The gravity of despair in her life twisted uneasily with a sliver of hope. Could this man, this billionaire, understand the weight carried by those like her? "I want to help," he began, but lost himself in the thought. Helping was transactional, a gesture of guilt that could not replace the hard-won tenacity she had utilized to climb above despair. The shift tugged at her resolve, urging her to defy the gravitational pull of her old self. I'm working towards my degree," she stammered, a quiet rebellion igniting the air between them. "I don't need pity, but support would mean something." David felt the heat of her determination call to his own buried ambitions. He had become so consumed by the mechanics of wealth that he had forgotten the zest of growth, the transformative journey of learning. A powerful urge to fight through the inertia of his privilege sparked within him, rekindling an ambition he thought he had forsaken. But what would that entail? How could a man entrenched in excess confront the limitations he inadvertently placed on himself? "You're right," he finally said, nearly whispering, like a fragile promise. "I don't know how, but I want to support you." As uncertainty bloomed into a tentative truce, a new reality began to unfold. David couldn't predict where this conversation would take them, both now vulnerable, stripped of the facades that defined their lives. He could not help but ponder the monumental question that bubbled beneath the surface. What did support really mean, and could he truly bridge the chasm between their worlds? The air was thick with uncharted possibilities, leaving David balancing on the cusp of change, unaware of its profound implications. But the question hung heavy. With each chance to confront the truth of his existence, would he rise to the occasion or slip back into complacent luxury? As they stood at the precipice of transformation, uncertainty loomed like a dense fog. In their midst, the ripple of change swelled, beckoning for deeper exploration. For both David and Maria, the unveiling of potential lay ahead. But would either have the courage to embrace it fully? David watched Maria struggle against the swell of her emotions, a poise she had honed in the mirror of servitude, now fracturing under the weight of his gaze. Something profound had shifted, and he understood that this encounter could catalyze change for both of them. The laughter behind them dulled into a distant reminder of the world that had never truly been part of him. "Can we start over?" he asked, pushing past the awkward silence that lingered, poised between discomfort and discovery. The words felt like a challenge, a plea for authenticity that had been long buried under layers of privilege. Maria hesitated. "Start over means what exactly?" she replied, skepticism lacing her voice. She analyzed him, seeking that elusive sincerity. In a space where she had felt invisible, he suddenly stood as a beacon of unexpected possibility. Yet familiarity with her own world warned her against naivety. "It means allowing ourselves to redefine what this moment is," he said, framing his hands as if shaping the very air around them. "I don't want to make you feel like a charity project. I want to understand what you need and how I can support you." The directness of his words stirred something within her. Maria felt the familiar flutter of ambition, challenging the instinct ingrained deep within her to retreat. She had learned early that survival often required conformity, but the gears in her mind whirred with the distinct possibility that perhaps the paradigm could shift. "It's about education," she said, keeping her tone even, though her heart raced. "I'm working part-time while taking classes. I want to be a social worker. I've seen too much, and I want to change lives, not just scrape by." The admission was raw, an unfiltered glimpse into a soul buried under responsibilities, yet desperate for expression. A newfound respect flickered in David's eyes, igniting a curiosity that had long extinguished. "You're pursuing something meaningful," he stated, genuine admiration coloring his tone. "You could change institutions, reshape futures." Maria sensed an unexpected camaraderie forming. Here was a man who had never battled for basic needs, yet he recognized the worth in dreams often dismissed. "But it's hard," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Balancing work, school, and this life. Sometimes it feels like I'm drowning." David nodded, feeling a connection pulse between them. "I understand," he admitted, drawing from encounters obscured by his wealth. "What if I could help you find opportunities? Internships, mentorships, concrete steps toward your goal?" Her breath caught at the thought, sparked by hope, yet tinged with disbelief. How could someone like him truly grasp the challenges she faced? "Are you sure you can?" she replied, unmasking her vulnerability. "We move in entirely different circles." "Yes," he affirmed with an intensity that softened his features. "But recognizing that distinction is significant. I spent years blinded by privilege. I want to be a part of something real." Maria studied him, the earnestness palpable. Yet another thought crept in. Was this another form of charity? The blooming dynamic between them posed a risk. Connection could lead to deeper disappointment. "Please don't make this a pity project," she warned, her eyes narrowing slightly, engaging him directly. "I've built my identity on sheer effort. Don't lessen that by simply throwing money or connections my way." "Trust me," David said, the weight of her expectations grounding him. "I respect your grit. I'm not trying to discount your journey. I want to walk alongside you. It's not about saving. It's about growing together." Something about his conviction urged her to relent. Perhaps this was more than a fleeting moment of misplaced guilt. Maybe it was the foundation of a true partnership, a blending of lives that might hum. The prospect was thrilling but equally daunting. They stood at the edge of a precipice, on the brink of forging a link that dared to cross the invisible divide. Maria could almost feel the oscillation between excitement and dread swirling within her. "Let's try," she finally said, her voice steady, opening the door to a connection that could redefine both their narratives. But as they exchanged tentative agreement, a thought flickered in David's mind. What if their burgeoning partnership unleashed forces neither was ready to confront, and what lay ahead would demand more courage than either had ever known? The afternoon shadows deepened, suggesting that amidst their emerging alliance, old paradigms would fight back, and troubles could harden like steel. Would they have the strength to face the tempest together? The air buzzed with unresolved tension as Maria and David took their first steps into an uncharted territory together. They exchanged nervous glances, each wrestling with their own ambitions and fears. For David, this new commitment felt like a vow to shed his privileged skin, confront uncomfortable truths, and learn how to walk alongside someone whose reality was so starkly different from his own. Maria felt the weight of responsibility hanging like a shroud over her dreams. The idea of internships and mentorship had ignited a flame of hope within her, yet the concern gnawed at her insides. Could she trust him? Could she afford another disappointment? Ignoring the tightening in her chest, she focused on what lay ahead, mapping out a plan that transformed her raw ambition into actionable steps. "If we're going to do this, I need a clear path," she declared, her voice firm, adding a sense of urgency to their conversation. "What do you envision? How can we turn this commitment into real opportunities?" David met her gaze, surprised at the fierceness of her approach. "Let's start by identifying local organizations related to social work. We can research them together, schedule meetings," he suggested, excitement blossoming in his voice. "I want to understand the issues firsthand, to see what you see, so I can truly help you." The earnestness in his eyes deflated some of her skepticism, sparking reluctant optimism. Despite her reservations, the thought of collaboration was intoxicating. What if they could carve out space for both of their aspirations in this ambitious venture? Over the next few days, Maria immersed herself in research, fueled by a newfound energy. She produced a list of potential companies and nonprofits, accompanied by her notes on their missions and challenges. Each organization added to her resolve, providing a glimmer of a future where she could enact real change. David matched her pace, his calendar filling with meetings that reshaped his understanding of socio-economic frictions. Meeting with everyone, from executives to social workers, provided him insight that his past encounters never did. Slowly, the walls he had built around himself started to crack. He found himself confronting uncomfortable realities about wealth, privilege, and responsibility, allowing them to settle in his mind. Yet, while David absorbed this knowledge, Maria found herself grappling with a conflict of her own. Her fear of vulnerability clashed with her burgeoning ambition. Each interaction with David stirred a mixture of excitement and intimidation, forcing her to confront the inner dialogue that cautioned her against distraction from her goals. Would she let this opportunity slip through her fingers out of fear? Or could she embrace the real possibility of growth? As their partnership progressed, they decided to attend a local community meeting, a pivotal moment destined to test their resolve. Tension simmered beneath the surface as they watched panelists discuss critical social issues. David, the outsider, felt painfully aware of his chasm of ignorance, while Maria's heart drummed with a strange mix of pride and anxiety. In the audience, questions bubbled within her. Who am I in this space? Am I truly equipped to engage in this nebulous world of advocacy? Maria, David's voice pierced through her thoughts, pulling her back into the moment. Would you consider sharing your insights during the Q&A? Her stomach lurched at the suggestion. A spotlight? Speaking up felt daunting and fraught with risk. I don't know if I'm ready, she countered, her voice trembling slightly at the thought of vulnerability. But something in David's eyes urged her on. This is your chance to be heard. You have an important perspective that deserves attention, he said, his conviction radiating hope. As the panel transitioned into questions, Maria's internal battle reached its peak. She realized that her willingness to share could challenge everything she had feared. Memories of past failures fogged her vision. What if she stumbled? What if they dismissed her? But then recollection of her purpose rose to the forefront. Her dream of being a social worker, her desire to impact lives. She could not let fear shape her trajectory. Taking a deep breath, she stood at the precipice of the unknown, ready to leap. The challenge demanded courage she wasn't entirely sure she possessed, yet the need for authenticity begged for action. As she opened her lips to speak, the world around her fell silent. Would this moment solidify her journey, or further entangle her in layers of doubt? Yet, just as she prepared to voice her thoughts, a commotion erupted in the room, redirecting everyone's gaze. An unexpected twist that could alter the very fabric of their unfolding narrative. What had they set in motion? The sudden commotion erupted like a thunderclap, shattering the tension that had enveloped Maria. Heads turned instinctively, and whispers rippled through the audience. Eyes darted toward the side of the stage, where a well-dressed woman had lost her balance and crashed unceremoniously into the small pool set up for a demonstration. A splash of water sent droplets flying, dousing nearby chairs and prompting gasps from the crowd. In that moment, Maria felt her own resolve teeter as she grappled with the shock unfolding before them. All at once, she lost sight of her own insecurities. The woman could have been anyone, a symbol of wealth and privilege suddenly rendered vulnerable by an unexpected accident. Maria's heart raced, not only from the spectacle but from the realization that life could change in an instant, both for the woman floundering in the pool and for herself standing rigid in the audience. David leaned in closer, his fingers entwined nervously. "Look at this chaos," he murmured, eyes wide. "It's unexpected. But maybe it's an opportunity?" An opportunity? The weight of those words hung heavily on her. She noticed the panelists hesitating, their meticulous decorum unraveling amidst the sudden turmoil. Maria's mind whirred. This was no ordinary meeting. It felt like a pivotal theater where personal narratives clashed and coalesced. Just as Maria began to absorb David's suggestion, the female panelist closest to the commotion, with leadership and intellect etched into her demeanor, rose from her seat. "Let's take a moment to reflect on what just happened." The urgency in her voice commanded immediate attention, drawing the audience from their stunned silence. This incident shows how quickly we can falter, and how necessary it is to address the safety and security in our communities. Maria's heart catalyzed. There it was, the catalyst her psyche had been waiting for. The fall served as a striking metaphor for the very issues they'd been discussing. Restlessness against the facade of control. Beneath the surface, lives intermingled with complexity, often overlooked in the glare of privilege. With a sudden clarity, Maria felt the sensation of voltage course through her body. The crowd's focus shifted, and opportunity lay glowing before her. Yes, it was daunting to step into the spotlight. They all had to wrestle with their vulnerabilities in that moment. If she found the courage to speak up, maybe she could connect the dots between suffering and elevation, serve to empower those like her who felt sidelined. "David, Her voice shook with uncertainty, but there was a fierceness behind it that urged her on. "I need to share," she breathed, realizing that her voice was not just a tool, but a bridge to the community she aspired to serve. David nodded, his expression encouraging, though she sensed his desire to protect her from the exposure she was about to undergo. "You've got this," he whispered, pride radiating from him. Her heart drummed in time with her racing thoughts. Maria wove through an imaginary script, thoughts spiraling about what she could articulate, the precision of her narrative presenting itself in real time, ready to merge her resolve with the urgency of the moment. As the panelist finished her remarks, imparting on the necessity of understanding vulnerability, Maria felt herself rising from her seat, as if pushed by unseen hands. It wasn't just about her. It was about people drawn from different backgrounds striving for connections, for change, Strength surged within her as she stepped to the microphone, relinquishing the walls of fear that had defined her until now. Just as she opened her mouth to capture the audience's attention, the collective energy shifting to embrace her, the doors flew open once more, and a group of new arrivals entered. Their familiarity with the panel struck Maria instantly, bearing an unfiltered honesty and unwavering determination to instigate dialogue in the space. Suddenly, the air crackled with potential again. Who were they? What stories of adversity or hope accompanied them? Everything she had anticipated, the focus, the narrative, her moment to contribute, shimmered in the haze of uncertainty. Yet now, another layer of intrigue hung around her anticipated words, intertwining her journey with yet more unexplored complexities. Maria stood at the nexus of possibility, two unforeseen routes unfolding before her. What was she really prepared for? What truths lay beyond that moment as she confronted her fear of vulnerability and the cascading realities of their intertwined paths? With a breath that felt heavier than all before, she grasped the microphone, knowing that whatever came next could redefine all they had set in motion. Maria's pulse quickened as her fingers tightened around the microphone. The commotion around her faded into a muted hum, the sudden arrival of new faces igniting a spark of curiosity and trepidation within her. She glanced at the group now standing toward the back of the room, their presence a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Were they allies in her journey, or would they become obstacles she hadn't anticipated? She swallowed hard, her throat constricted with uncertainty. While the panelist had called for a reflection on vulnerability, the moment felt susceptible to chaos. The woman in the pool was a reminder of the unpredictable nature of life, suddenly illustrated by the penetrating gazes of the newcomers. They seemed to possess something raw, unfiltered, a collective resolve that surged in contrast with her own wavering ambition. With every breath, a wave of determination washed over her. This wasn't merely about her voice, but about representing the silent struggles of those deeply embedded in society's cracks. She had come so far, yet fear threatened to entangle her again. It echoed in her mind. What if she stumbled over her words? What if no one listened? Yet another part of her knew that speaking out was precisely what she needed to do. Taking a deep breath, she reminded herself of the impact the fall had already signaled. Seeking the confidence she had so desperately craved, she projected her voice into the space. What just happened reminds us that everyone, regardless of status, can face moments of vulnerability. It's in those moments that our true strength is revealed. The audience's eyes flicked toward her, a tapestry of curiosity woven into their expressions. She could sense the shift begin. A ripple of hope strayed through the crowd, reeling them into her narrative. As adrenaline hummed through her body, she continued. We often focus on our masks, guarding against scrutiny, while neglecting the beautiful complexities of our existence. What if, rather than hiding our vulnerabilities, we embrace them to connect and elevate one another? It was a bold statement, one that drew the attention of both the panelists and the newcomers. She locked eyes with the woman who had just taken a seat, her assurance palpable despite the earlier chaos. A statistic she recalled about community connection rushed forward in her thoughts. She had to advocate for this. But then, just as she felt her momentum gain traction, one of the newcomers stepped forward. A tall man, sharp and impeccably dressed, fixed his gaze on her as if gauging whether she was worth his time. And how do you propose we do that? What does embracing vulnerability actually achieve? His voice was calm, but carried an underlying challenge, tightening the air in the room. Maria's heartbeat surged. Did he consider her words trivial? She took a moment to analyze his question, realizing it invoked the very essence of her journey. It creates dialogue. It fosters understanding. It builds an atmosphere where people can share their stories without fear of judgment, she answered, voice steadying. The room held its breath, uncertainty echoing in the silence following her words. She had taken a bold stance, but faced a glaring truth. The challenge had been set. The man smirked, almost mocking. Words are easy, actions are the hard part. Who will join you in this conversation? Who will risk the vulnerability you speak of? His skepticism sliced deep, sending a jolt through her core. Fear wrapped its cold fingers around her stomach once more, but beneath it grew a fierce determination. This was no longer just about her. It was a challenge to all that she believed in. As the murmurs of the audience intensified, the eyes of the woman who had initially fallen disrupted the scene with her sudden recovery, her presence now exuding a fiery spirit. Maria sensed that the moment required her to dig deeper, to rise against the skepticism overshadowing her intentions. "Then let me be the first to embody that change," she stated, her voice gaining strength. "Let's elevate the dialogue. Let's share our stories and deconstruct the walls between us, not just today, but continually until we change the narrative." The room erupted into discordant whispers, a spectrum of reactions flooding back to her. Some skeptical, some intrigued, and others electrified by her fortitude. Had she sparked something? Or had she unleashed a storm? The tall man's stare bore into her, assessing yet perceptive. She could feel the tension coiling, each heartbeat an uncertain reminder of the impending outcome. What if her call rang hollow? What if she failed to inspire? Yet, she stood firm, scanning the crowd for familiar expressions of encouragement. Somewhere, somehow, her voice needed to matter. She felt the unrelenting weight of possibility, merging with her determination. With uncertainty rising, she took a breath, drawing upon the faith she had awakened within herself. The air crackled with uncharted potential, a defining moment waiting to unfold. Maria sensed that the stakes had elevated far beyond a single speech. They were about to confront both her fear and an unexpected ally waiting in the shadows. As the tension enveloped her, a single thought echoed in her mind. Could she truly rise to this challenge, or would she falter at the edge of ambition? The moment of truth was rapidly approaching. Her words hung in the air, reverberating amidst the silence born of uncertainty. Maria felt the weight of every gaze, the heightened awareness that her call to action had stirred something profound. Deep within, she battled the impulse to recoil, to shrink back under the scrutiny of both the audience and the man who had doubted her. This was it, a moment she had long yearned for, yet never truly believed she could seize. But the swirling doubts were rapidly solidifying into a resolve she hadn't expected. Facing the tall man, she recognized the opportunity to confront not just his skepticism, but her own lingering insecurities. "Change starts with willingness," Maria said, daring to step closer. "What if you embolden a friend or colleague to share their own story? One conversation can ignite a larger movement." The man raised an eyebrow, his smirk fading slightly as the challenge unfolded. There was no backing down now, no retreating into the shadows. She was shifting her focus from convincing him to igniting a spark in the hearts around her. "What if we make a pact to share our truths? Imagine a room where vulnerability becomes the foundation for connection, where we redefine strength, not by our facades, but by our authentic selves." As her voice rose with conviction, the audience transformed into a living entity. Some nodded thoughtfully, others leaned forward, and a few exchanged glances that hinted at budding curiosity. This was the shift she had hoped to inspire. But was it enough to drown out the skepticism emanating from the man who had initially cast doubt? In her peripheral vision, she spotted the woman who had fallen into the pool, a figure of resilience who now wore a warm smile. Perhaps this was the unexpected ally Maria had sensed. How could one person's vulnerability become a beacon for others? Her trajectory began to align with a greater purpose. What she had feared could now become a shared journey. Yet, the tall man's interruption still hung heavily in the air. So, you propose we all just risk our vulnerabilities based on your words? His voice dripped with challenge. What about the fallout? What if it alienates us further? But it was then that a hidden talent surfaced, an ability to improvise, to adapt in real time under pressure. Maria's mind sped through examples of people who had dared to connect, even in the face of adversity. It's about creating a space for empathy, even if it's uncomfortable. Every scar has a story, and every story has the power to heal. If we navigate the fallout together, won't we emerge stronger? For a fleeting moment, a glimmer of hesitation flickered across his face as if her words had softened some of his defenses. Across the room, she could sense a shift, the audience accepting the challenge as something palpable, something they could engage with together. But just as she felt the possibilities blooming, her heart raced with the fear of inadequacy mounting in her chest. What if her courage faltered? What if no one stepped forward to support her vision? The internal conflict simmered like a storm, each heartbeat a reminder of her precarious position. Look, she continued, determination narrowing her focus. This isn't just about me or my ideas. It's about you, the stories within you that can resonate with others. Let's build this together. Let's not abandon the connection through fear. And there it was. In her presentation of vulnerability as a collective strength, Maria uncovered something potent, the opportunity for shared agency. She was no longer just a voice. She was now a catalyst, amplifying the collective voice of experience and truth. The murmurs shifted again, less skeptical and more exploratory. Ideas of collaboration began to weave themselves into the atmosphere. Maria dared to hope. But the tall man's gaze remained sharp as he finally spoke. If you want solidarity, you'll have to gather allies who can also confront their fears. A challenge, undeniably. And yet beneath it lay an opening. If she could cultivate the courage to seek those allies, perhaps she'd align not just with voices, but hearts willing to engage in real dialogue. I will, Maria replied, breathing purpose into her words. I will seek allies. I will find those willing to share and listen. We can do this. We have to. The room vibrated, anticipation pulsing through the air as she felt the weight of her purpose solidify. But even as conviction surged, she realized the journey before her would demand not only courage, but an unwavering commitment to her own growth. Her voice could inspire, but her actions were the real testament. As she left the stage, adrenaline surged through her veins, cocooning her in a sudden silence. Would the challenge to gather an unexpected alliance ignite a transformation, or would she confront further struggles? She took one last glance at the audience as she descended the steps, gauging their reactions, not just for validation, but for a sense of shared responsibility that now weighed on her shoulders. The tall man's skepticism still loomed, an unfulfilled promise whispering in her mind. What if, after all, she truly could make a difference? The challenge resonated clearly. To confront her fears, to build alliances within the shadows of uncertainty, and to stay true to her mission, even when the weight of expectations pressed down. Her heart raced with a new urgency, pushing her forward. The time had come to face not just the tall man's doubts, but to find the allies who shared her vision. And as she exited the gathering, the question lingered: who among the audience would join her in this quest? Maria stepped into the corridor, a sharp contrast to the charged atmosphere that lingered behind her. The stage was now a distant realm of energy and anticipation, while here, everything felt muted. Even the fluorescent lights overhead seemed to buzz in a way that amplified her growing anxiety. It wasn't merely the echo of the tall man's challenge that reverberated in her mind. It was the weight of her own commitment, the determination that felt both electrifying and terrifying. She needed to act, to transform the words she had spoken into something tangible. But the doubt, an unwelcome intruder, slithered back into her thoughts. How could she possibly find allies when her own conviction wavered? What if no one was willing to step into the light of vulnerability alongside her? Taking a deep breath, she imagined the faces in the audience, consolidating their collective curiosity into a single visage. It was the woman who had twice confronted the pool. Perhaps more than an ally, she could be a partner in this mission. Maria's mind shifted to strategizing. A conversation first, that had to be the starting point. As she trudged onward, determined to find that woman, Maria's resolve solidified into a plan. She needed an approach that stoked courage rather than fear. With each step, she mentally rehearsed her invitation. The energy she had summoned on stage must flow into her next encounter. Each word a building block for the alliance she sought. Outside, the soft evening breeze welcomed her. Instead of feeling chaotic, the world beyond the confines of the hall offered a calmness, a grounding that bolstered her spirit. Confidence must be manifested in the way she carried herself. She straightened her back, adjusting the physical manifestation of her internal state, and ventured deeper into the garden where the gathering had spilled over. She spotted the woman sitting by a scattering of potted plants, her earlier smile still luminous on her face. Maria felt an unexpected warmth at seeing her again, like a flicker of possibility reigniting. Approaching slowly, she hesitated at the edge of the woman's space, a whirl of emotions competing for dominance. "Hi," Maria began, her voice steady but vulnerable. "I'm Maria. I saw you in the audience earlier." "I know," the woman replied, a knowing smile curling her lips again. "You spoke beautifully." Maria paused, unsure whether to discuss the topics of vulnerability they had witnessed, or to divert onto safer ground. But the moment hung between them, waiting for authenticity to take the lead. "Can we talk?" Maria finally asked. "I feel like there's something profound we could do together." The woman regarded her with curiosity, her expression softening. "What are you envisioning?" "I want to create a space where people can share their truths. It won't be easy, I know that. But what if we begin small?" The words spilled out. "Together, we could build something that encourages others to express themselves too. I'm convinced it could open doors for more than just dialogue between us." The woman's smile bloomed, an enthusiastic glint in her eyes. "That sounds fundamentally worthwhile. But the truth is..." She hesitated, revealing a layer of complexity. "I have my own reservations. This requires understanding the fears of others. Empathy on a level that's often hard to reach." Maria nodded, recognizing the vulnerability in her new friend's admission. They were standing on common ground. "Exactly," she replied, emboldened by the connection. "I'm not looking for perfection. I'm merely hoping for honesty." They spoke for what felt like hours, exchanging personal stories and fears about failure, disappointment, and their aspirations. As Maria listened, she realized this woman had faced battles of her own. Each revelation mirrored her struggles, and together, they began to sketch the contours of their alliance. But that initial spark of connection compelled a new challenge into focus. What about the people they wanted to reach? The possibilities now felt limitless, yet Maria remained tethered to that nagging doubt. Would she truly be able to lead others toward that shared vulnerability she envisioned? As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting an amber hue around them, Maria felt a flicker of hope mixed with trepidation. There were still many uncertainties ahead. Would they attract more allies? Would they foster the courage to break open the hearts of their peers? With a new determination hardening in her chest, she took a deep breath, ready to embrace the next step. "Let's plan a gathering, just the two of us to start," she suggested. "We can write down what we'll say, how we'll invite others." "Yes," the woman replied enthusiastically. But suddenly tension filled the air as the tall man's doubt loomed over Maria's mind like a cloud. Had she truly begun to pave the way? Or was this merely the start of a much larger battle she was yet to fully comprehend? As she prepared to delve into the logistics of their plan, an unexpected text buzzed in her pocket. A message from a name she recognized instantly. It read simply, "We need to talk. It's important." The weight of the message swung her heart into chaos, tugging at her resolve. Who was it that wanted to speak? And would it impact the fragile alliance she was about to build? Maria's heart raced as she pulled her phone from her pocket, her fingers trembling at the implications of the message. The name on the screen illuminated her thoughts, taking her back to hard choices and buried emotions. It was Lucas, a former mentor who had always pushed her toward growth, yet had also imposed a sense of expectation she often found suffocating. "Are you okay?" the woman asked, her brow furrowing with concern. "Yeah, I just—" Maria's voice trailed off as her gaze drifted back to the phone. "I need to respond to this." Her heart pounded louder with each reluctant glance at the screen. Lucas had always been forthright, but his words carried the weight of authority that had both inspired and terrified her. What could he want? Regret spilled over from their last meeting, when too many unspoken truths had lingered in the air. "Do you have to?" the woman asked, her tone a mix of support and caution. This conversation felt important. We were just beginning to lay the groundwork. The internal conflict boiled within her. Maria wanted to nurture this newfound connection, to explore the possibility of creating a space that fostered honesty and vulnerability. But at what cost? Was Lucas about to drag her back into a web of obligations that could threaten her budding partnership? Gathering her courage, Maria nodded. "I'll just reply quickly. Let him know I'll call him later." As she thumbed a cursory response, she felt the tangle of anticipation and anxiety wrap around her chest. The weight of her unfulfilled potential pressed down on her. Would Lucas's call lead her back to the well-trodden path of expectations? Or would it lead to an important revelation? Once the message sent, she directed her focus back to the woman, who gazed at her curiously, perhaps sensing the storm brewing within. "Sorry about that," Maria said, forcing herself to refocus. "I'm glad we're talking. I really think we can make a difference." The woman smiled, though it was tinged with the understanding that sometimes uncomfortable conversations are necessary for growth. "Let's focus on our plan. How do we invite others?" Maria took a moment, exhaling deeply as she reflected on the weight of their mission. "We could create a simple pamphlet or invitation that highlights the main ideas. But maybe the key is not just the words, but how we present ourselves. If we lead with authenticity, I believe we can draw people in." "I agree," the woman responded, enthusiasm rekindled in her voice. "If we show our own vulnerabilities first, they might feel inspired to share theirs." As they brainstormed invitations, each idea began to rejuvenate Maria's spirit. The words flowed, ideas blossomed. It felt empowering. She was no longer solely defined by her doubts. This emerging partnership reflected new possibilities, urging her to address her own fears instead of succumbing to them. Yet, as they continued to build their plans, Maria sensed a shadow lurking on her horizon. The looming fear of Lucas's call gnawed at her persistence. Each word they drafted draped a comforting veil over uncertainty. But it wouldn't erase the tension building inside her. "Could this work?" she questioned aloud, searching for affirmation. "Definitely," the woman replied, her voice steady. "But remember, we'll need to encourage each other along the way. Starting small doesn't diminish the significance of our intention." Maria nodded, absorbing the weight of those words. Perhaps nurturing this venture meant facing her own demons, while allowing her partner to see her truth. Would sharing herself authentically empower others to find their own voices? Suddenly, her phone vibrated, interrupting the faded argument in her mind. A new message from Lucas flashed on the screen. "I'm outside. We need to talk now." Panic surged through her. Was this a coincidence, or a sign that she was being pulled back into a life that had conditioned her to doubt herself? I have to go, she whispered, the fear of confrontation gripping her, compellingly merging with her resolve. The woman reached out, grasping Maria's forearm gently. You've got this, whatever it is. Remember what we talked about. Lead with honesty. With that, Maria took a deep breath, steeling herself for what lay ahead. The ground shifted beneath her, blending the exhilaration of trust with a budding dread. As she stepped away, the taste of potential lingered, yet the uncertainty of the conversation brought a new weight of conflict. Maria headed toward the outdoor entrance, each step magnifying the clock of her choices ticking louder in her mind. Would Lucas's confrontation sharpen her resolve, or would it unsettle her to the core? The moment for personal discovery was at hand, one way or another. Maria stepped out into the crisp evening air, the weight of anticipation heavy on her shoulders. The delicate undertones of dusk enveloped her, contrasting sharply with the swirling thoughts of doubt, threatening to undermine her newfound resolve. Each step toward her former mentor felt steeped in both fear and an electric charge, like standing on the edge of an untested precipice. Seeing Lucas waiting just a few feet away, the anxious flutter in her stomach intensified. He stood casually, arms crossed, but the glint in his eyes betrayed an unyielding seriousness. A moment of hesitation gripped her, but she pushed through, determined to stand her ground. Hey, Maria. His tone was familiar, yet authoritative. I wasn't expecting to see you here. She forced a smile, albeit shaky. I didn't expect to see you either, she replied, her voice steadying. I just had a conversation about something really important. Important how? He pressed, raising an eyebrow, curiosity mixing with skepticism. This was the moment she had to articulate her thoughts, to confront the shadows of the past, and not merely slip into his familiar narrative. I'm planning to start a space for sharing vulnerabilities, a place where people can discuss the realities they face. With each word, her confidence built. This was a path to fulfillment that she intended to pursue. Lucas nodded, but a hint of that familiar condescension lingered in his demeanor. That's commendable. But how do you plan to get people to actually open up? Emotions aren't so easily disentangled. By leading with honesty, Maria maintained, passion threading through her voice. By showing my own vulnerabilities first and inviting them in. It's not just a concept, it's a mission to create real connections. She could see the calculating look on his face, the familiar skepticism sinking into his features. You know, the world out there is harsh. The courage you're talking about is rarely rewarded, not with those at the top. A flicker of fear threatened her resolve, but she brushed it aside. This was her opportunity to push back. But that's precisely why I want to do this. People are struggling. They need spaces to feel seen and heard, beyond the facades they wear. If I don't take this chance to spark that change, what was all this for? His expression shifted slightly, perhaps a hint of recognition dawning. And what if you fail? What if no one shows up? Then I'll learn from it. It's not just the outcome. It's about undertaking the journey with intention. Her voice carried conviction now. This isn't just for saving others. It's about carving a place where I can belong too. That's valuable. For a moment, silence fell between them, her words seeming to echo into the vast expanse of the night. You've always been brilliant at taking risks, Lucas finally said, his tone softening marginally. But I've watched you hesitate when it mattered most. Are you sure you're ready to tackle this? More than ever, she replied, fiercely affirming her own potential. If I succeed, it means creating a path for others like me. If I stumble, I'll get right back up. His gaze met hers, ostensibly gauging her sincerity. The conversation spun into an unexpected direction. awakening a flicker of pride inside her. "I won't question your ambition," he acknowledged slowly. "But you need a solid plan. These ideas, while good, will require a roadmap to transform into reality." The heat of uncertainty coiling around her chest began to subtly morph into excitement. "I've already started sketching the framework," she shared, fueled by passion. "I'm collaborating with someone who's just as passionate. We're ready to explore how to build actual spaces for these conversations." Lucas's demeanor shifted into contemplative. "Then let's talk strategy. If you're serious about this, support from me can help you navigate the initial hurdles." His words, once veiled in doubt, now opened a door she hadn't anticipated. Had he believed in her all along, buried beneath layers of preconceived expectations? Furthermore, she felt a concrete sense of accomplishment tomorrow, a mapping of ideas and dreams blossoming into actionable steps, bolstered by Lucas's reluctant support. The whirlwind of doubt and uncertainty was being channeled into a burgeoning partnership of sorts, and Maria could sense the ground beneath her feet solidifying. "But it's not just about me," she insisted, keen to establish this assertion. "This is about creating a community." Lucas studied her again, the flicker of appreciation emerging anew. "Fair enough. But remember that others will challenge your resolve. This vision carries weight, Maria, and it begins with how you translate these ideals into action." "I understand," she replied, gratitude mixing with determination. "I'm ready to take on the responsibility." As she met Lucas's gaze, a new flame ignited within her, something akin to clarity. Conversations spun between them, exploring the critical tenets of what she envisioned, but now buoyed by a newfound alliance. Together, they mapped rudimentary frameworks, synthesizing the process of intentional action. When she finally wrapped up the meeting, a sense of recognition and accomplishment settled within her. Maria had turned an anticipated confrontation, the daunting echo of expectations, into a solid foundation for realizing her goals. Their discussion had transformed from one of doubt into one of strategic partnership and promise. Stepping away triumphantly, she reflected on her journey, how she had taken a leap from feeling lost in the cavern of societal expectations to confidently sharing her ambition with the very person who had once intimidated her. It was her declaration, the start of a challenging but exciting chapter. Returning to her new ally, Maria felt an energetic surge. Together, they would forge their own path, share their truths, and call others to join them in the attempt to shift their collective narrative. As she walked back into the gathering, her heart pulsing with renewed focus, she recognized that fulfillment lay not just in achieving a goal, but in the rich tapestry of growth along the way. And with each step, she conferred strength not only onto herself, but onto the community she harbored hopes of building. "Let's ignite that conversation," she said readily, as she locked eyes with her ally. "This is only the beginning." With every word exchanged, they wove the fabric of their partnership tighter. Maria felt the thrill of possibility coursing through her veins, confident that the future held stories waiting to unfold. Each a testament to not just their dreams, but to the transformative power of authenticity. And with that, she was prepared to share what she had set in motion, with courage, with ambition, and now, with the knowledge that she need not walk alone. As the evening unfolded, she was ready to build a bridge that crossed the chasm between vulnerability and connection. A venture blazing brightly ahead, fueled by shared intention and the hope of uncharted horizons. Now was the time to engage, to ignite that movement she had so fervently envisioned. If you resonate with Maria's transformative journey and wish to witness the depth of such emotional stories, you need to subscribe now to our channel. Don't wait even one more second to share this experience. Leave a like to fuel our mission and comment your thoughts, reactions, or theories about what might come next. Share instinctively this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is crucial to keep this journey alive. Show that you care.